I'm like, wow, I'm drinking, I'm having sex, I'm going out, like all these things that I know you know better not to do, but are still doing them. And I was thinking through like, how did I get to this point where I never thought I would be, but I never thought I'd be there because I had grown up in the church. And
so I'm not just the curl guys are in your favor. Hey y'all, unattended today. The lesson for today is do not. All right, friends, welcome back to my YouTube channel, A Radical Relationship, where we are talking all things faith and all things lifestyle. And today I have a really great friend with me, and I won't steal her thunder by introducing her, but Ajya's going to be my second guest, and what I'm actually going to be renaming Girls Like Me series. At first I was thinking couch conversations, but I've had a change of heart. So let's start, Ajya, with just kind of a quick introduction and kind of tell the people about yourself.
Okay, well, I'm Ajya. I am 27. I'm originally from Las Vegas, Nevada. Currently, my job is homemaker. That's what I like to say now. With a little side hustle of baking that I actually just started this summer, and that has taken off. I am married to my husband. We were married 3 years, September 16th. We have 3 boys, 12, 8, and 3 months. Just
Yeah, but time really flies by when you mention the 3 years. I'm like, dang, 2017? That's crazy.
Yeah.
Start a new life as adults.
Oh, and I wasn't ready at all.
Right. All right. So just to give a little bit of background on how we met each other. So we both spent time in Richmond, Virginia, where I currently am, and you are no longer, but that's okay. God had plans. So yeah, I moved here in 2014, and you were already here, right? So when did you move to Richmond?
I moved to Richmond in 2013, August of 2013. I had just graduated culinary school in North Carolina, and I knew I didn't want to go back home. And one of my good friends, she was from Virginia, and she's like, I'm going back home. And I was like, great, I'll go back home with you. So that's how I ended up in Richmond.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I know that some of the things that stand out to me about our friendship, so when Jonathan and I were kind of first a thing, and he had kind of his like girl group of friends, you were the first one that was kind of like, who is this chick who thinks she like my friend? All right, let me get to know her. So when I was like reflecting on that, I remember I think it may have been like the first time we spent significant time together was like on this drive to Charlottesville. There was like a singles conference or something going on. Yeah. And I was like, oh, this might be pretty easily actually. Like, I actually like her. I don't have to pretend to like her.
Yeah, it was definitely the longest conversation. I mean, the time that we'd spent that drive it was the longest for sure.
Right, yeah. And I remember just like feeling really grateful at the time because I was the newbie, that like somebody would kind of take the time to try to get to know me and feel me out a little bit and see what I was like. So I appreciated that. And then like the friendship continued to progress, of course, and you're in my wedding. And even as I was thinking about that, I was like, actually, like, I spent that weekend with you leading up to the engagement, which was crazy. It was your last weekend in Richmond. So I was like, oh my gosh, so much has transpired.
It has been a lot that's happened.
Exactly, yeah. So let's shift a little bit and kind of start out with just sort of generally, you know, if somebody asks you about your testimony and kind of how you came to know God, what's that story?
So I am a Kingdom kid. I have been a part of the ICOC. I was part of the ICOC. My parents were met when I was 2. They got baptized, and so I've been in that church for quite some time. And so being a kingdom kid to me was, as I reflect on it as an adult, was probably the best thing that could have happened to me. I definitely enjoyed my time, just growing up in the church and having those kinds of friendships around and having that kind of family, which is also why I believe that family is just, it's not the people that are necessarily your blood, but the ones that also take care of you.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I went to all the camps all summer long. I was a part of like all the activities, and leading into the teens, which is when they usually start like, is that studying the Bible something you want to do? And in what we consider my graduating class in church was, everybody studied the Bible, and I mean like every single person.
Wow.
What was hard was that about the same number also fell away within a year or two. And so definitely by the time I graduated high school, only very few were still, disciples and even still going to church and participating in activities.
Yeah.
And when it came in the teens to study the Bible, I had started, and I mean, I had gotten all the way, just learning about what the cross really meant and what it meant to me, and watching Passion of the Christ as part of the studies. It wasn't as moving as it probably should have been, because I felt like my sins weren't, as a kingdom kid, I felt like my sins weren't openly like visible, because I wasn't out drinking or partying and stuff like that. My sins are like jealousy, envy. I'm not empathetic, like things that aren't visible. They were sins of my heart. And so that was really something that I struggled to get past with the study. So I ended up not getting baptized, and I was like, I was the only one that didn't. Um, and so, I continue on to high school. In my senior year, I met my very first boyfriend. That was a whirlwind experience. I had never dated before. He wasn't a part of the church. He had gone to church his whole life, but wasn't a part of ours. And it was definitely so very new and so very fun for me that I was like all in, from the beginning. And that led to, doing things that I know I wouldn't have done. He was a little bit older. Um, so we met my senior year of high school. He was actually going into the military, and we were together for 2 months before he left for basic training. And in that time, like I was like pining over this boy. And I just remember like, this is the only person I ever want to be with. And I'm like, 18, and that was my mindset.
Yeah.
Um, so he got out of basic. I graduated high school, and he actually ended up being stationed in Virginia, and I was going to culinary school in North Carolina. Um, and we were together a lot more because we were closer, like just state-wise. And so we spent more time together, and that is when I realized a lot more things about who he was instead of just talking on the phone. And that turned into, learning that he was physically and emotionally abusive, which wasn't something that I had ever dealt with in my life. I had never, and I didn't hear a lot about, growing up. I feel like I lived a very sheltered childhood. But so when those things kind of started happening, wasn't, I didn't have the wherewithal to really understand, how to get out of it and how to respect myself enough to get out of it. Um, and so that continued. We ended up dating for 2 years, but in those 2 years, very physical. Um, I, he would hit me. I've been pushed down. He pushed me down a flight of stairs. And it was towards the end. We broke up December of 2012. I just remember it so clearly. We broke up December 2012, and that was when, he actually pushed me down the stairs, and um, I was supposed to. I went back to my dorms. He was calling me, and I was like, I can't talk to you. Like, this is not the kind of life I want to live. This is not the kind of life that, I my family wants me to live. My parents knew none of this, and I felt like if I had told them, it would have, uh, change their view on me. If I told anybody, it would change their view on me. Because he was in the military, I didn't want people to see him any differently. And so I had a lot of guilt about even just sharing that these are the things that were happening to me. And it took a really long time to get over that fear of not only what he would do to me if I started, saying all these things about him, but how people would then perceive me. Like,
Yeah.
she was not smart enough to, stick up for herself, or, not smart enough to just simply leave. And that's the mindset that people kind of have towards what is like what I consider myself like physical abuse victim, is that, why didn't you just leave? And I honestly couldn't tell you why I didn't. But the last time that happened was when I was like, I can't, like, I knew I couldn't live like this, and I knew that that's not someone that I could grow old with. Like, and at that point, it was clear. I also made the decision I didn't want to get married. I didn't want to have children, because this experience had been so traumatizing for me.
Yeah.
So we broke up December of 2012. I went home for Christmas. And in that time home, I was with my church family. I was hanging out again. I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulder, because I wasn't worried about what had happened. I still hadn't told my parents what he had done for the last 2 years. And I didn't end up telling them, honestly, until I got married to my husband, because it wasn't something that
Wow.
it was something that I was holding so hard on, like, that I was just holding on to so hard. And I didn't want my dad to go to jail, because he would have killed him. So there was a lot of things that were just like that happened. And when I went home, seeing the people that were in the singles ministry and campus, and spending time with them, and how their lives had changed since I'd been away, I really, like, I wanted that kind of love and affection. And I had talked to a lot of sisters, like, how is it that you guys just have this, like, happiness, or just like you're just content with where you are right now? And it was God, and which was the answer all along.
Right.
And I was too much of sheltered. And when you go away to college after being a Kingdom kid, like, when you're a Kingdom kid, going away to college for me was like, oh my gosh, I don't have to wake up on Sundays. Like, no one's here to tell me that I have to go to church to do this and that, and I get to sleep in, and I can take it, like, so, like, really going through those emotions of like, wow, the answer that I needed was like, I just need to be consistent about my love for God, or just, making that actual decision to be baptized. And so that was December. I went back to culinary school. I graduated the following May. I was going home for the summer, and my ex-boyfriend actually showed up at my graduation, scared the crap out of me. My parents were there, my grandparents were there, and I was like, well, if I talk to him, they're gonna, like, I didn't know what to do in that moment. And he wanted to talk, and I'm like, I can't talk to you, because I feel like if I talk to you and have this conversation with you, you're just gonna pull me back into this cycle of,
Yeah.
I love you, I love you, I love you. And that's what I wanted. I wanted the love. And that I just knew if I had that conversation with him. So I like ignored him the whole weekend. And then I ended up going back. When I went back home, I reached out to our women's ministry leader, and I was like, I want to study the Bible. I want to have that kind of contentness with myself that are, these women have, because I'm trying to find love in this place that's literally going to hurt me. And something about, I don't know how it's that I didn't know how I got to that point, because I had been taught so differently. I grew up so differently, with all these wonderful examples of marriage and love and dating relationships. And somehow I was like I felt like I was on the wrong side.
Yeah.
Knew that the right side involved God. And so I had to figure out what that meant, though. And so I started studying the Bible with our women's ministry leader and several of the women that I grew up with. And it was in that moment that at that time I was like, well, now I have like different, my sins were now, you could see them outwardly, whether it be sex or alcohol. Like, I was like, wow, those are the things that I have now done. And I never thought I would do because I had lived this lifestyle in church. And so coming to the realization, like my sins, whether they're outwardly or my heart, it's all bad. I was making sin like, well, if you did this, you're worse than me. And that's not the playing field that we're on. We're all on the equal level playing field. And so that was kind of hard for me to understand and to really grasp. But studying the Bible, I studied the Bible for a month and a half. And it was pretty much every day for a month and a half, 3 to 4 hours a day. And because I knew I had to figure out why I was trying to find love in this place that wasn't going to actually satisfy my heart. So yeah, I was baptized June 27th, 2013. I had all my family there, my dad and my mom, and just having my whole church family that I'd grown up with, 150 people at my baptism, was absolutely amazing. And continuing that, I thought that I would want to stay home and be a part of that church, and whether help, in ministry specifically, or in the Bible studies, like just what I could do for my church. I knew that if I wanted to continue to grow, I had to continue to be away, because I felt like I would get too comfortable in my home church. And so I decided to move to Virginia, where I found a church where there was and has been a church that was so supportive and just took me in and loved up on me, and really helped me grow as a Christian and really understand what it meant for me to follow God. And I didn't feel pressured I didn't feel like I was trying to make other people happy by following God. This is the decision that I decided to make at the time that was right for me.
Yeah.
Where I think Kingdom kids can sometimes get caught up in like, well, everyone else is doing it. Everyone else in the church is saying the Bible, or like, going to these events and doing these things and being a part of ministry. And I just wanted to be able to sit with my like decision. Like, if I'm going to follow God, like, how do I best do that in an environment that is completely new to me? And I mean, Richmond really put me out of my comfort zone in the sense that like we were sharing on campus, we're sharing at malls, we're hanging out in places, and like I would have never done that at home because I wouldn't have felt like I think I would have felt like I wouldn't have needed to. And that's not what I wanted. I wanted to be able to understand what my decision and what that meant and how I can share it with others. So yeah, that's the abridged version.
Yeah, there were a couple things that you talked about that were really good. You mentioned this perspective of like you were, when it was the like, I love you, I love you, I love you, you knew that like, okay, I know that that's what my heart is kind of longing for. So I need to like be over here, so that I can really kind of like think soberly, about like the reality of the situation though.
Yeah.
And I just think that that's really huge because like it's difficult to break away from that in any kind of situation, or when it's any kind of entity over here that has a pull on you. And honestly, easier to just like, oh man, but it's gratifying in some weird way. So
Yeah.
I'll continue. And then you also mentioned how like you were in a situation where like it's not just gonna hurt me, it's literally going to hurt me. Kind of like that differentiation, because like as a person who had more so heart sins, in a weird way, God was able to kind of flip that on its head and say, okay, now what? Now that you can physically see what sin does to you, like now it's absolute.
It's so interesting. Like when I think back about like when I first left home, and by the time like I got baptized, it was a complete 180, and it was something because I could now. I'm like, wow, I'm drinking, I'm having sex, I'm going out, like all these things that I know you know better not to do, but are still doing them. And I was thinking through like, how did I get to this point where I never thought I would be, but I never thought I'd be there because I had grown up in the church. And these are all the things that like, whether or not it's the right way, like I just knew like these are, you know better not to do these things. And something about being away from home was like liberating. So, but that's not what I wanted. That's not what I was looking for. I was looking for something that, wasn't going to fulfill me in the way that I wanted to be fulfilled. And so it was just looking and seeing the 2.5 year difference. I'm like, wow, it happened so quickly in my mind, like went from 0 to 100, and just, I couldn't at that time fathom how I'd gotten there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel that. I feel similarly in a lot of different ways. College was the same for me. I didn't grow up as a kingdom kid, quote unquote, but I grew up in church. And so there was no doubt in my mind right from wrong and what I should and shouldn't have been doing. And I was doing those things before I left home, but the perfectionist in me wouldn't be honest, about it because I had an image to maintain.
Right.
Once I got to college, I no longer had an image to maintain, because
Yeah.
now I've like created this whole different person for myself. And so they know me as that shell anyway. So no
Right.
different.
Yeah.
And then moving to Richmond, it kind of went back the other direction when I got baptized, that I like completely reverted back to perfection shell. And I feel like I'm just now through everything starting to like finally have some balance, some balance in my life.
Yeah. And I think that's what's so interesting about like those transitions from, living at home, going to college, and going into work and being an adult, is that each of those transitions is when you reflect back on, how did I get here, what are the things that led me to these things, and yeah, so it's just, yeah,
Yeah.
college.
Yeah. So you were in Richmond for 3 years. Was it 2014 to no 2013 to
2013 to almost exactly 3 years. But yeah, 3 years. I The difference between me moving to Richmond, what I noticed, than moving to college in Charlotte, was that I was like I was much, as a disciple, I was more motivated to be a part of the congregation. Like I wanted those things.
20?
Um, and Richmond, just open arms. Honestly, I couldn't have asked for a better place to really like start that journey, um, because it was easier that nobody knew necessarily my background in that way.
Right.
Um, and so it was like, okay, well, I'm starting fresh. Like this is how I want to be a part of these situations. Like I want to be part of Bible studies. I want to help grow the campus ministry. And so those are the things that I got to just ultimately just start out with as being a disciple. I'm like, okay, I know that this is what I want to do. I know that I have to share the word of God, because I want people to I wanted women to understand that no matter whatever situation you're in, like there is a different kind of love. And that was really important. That was what was important to me, is the love aspect of being baptized.
That's really great. Hold, please. Okay. And so then building friendships in Richmond, and kind of having a fresh start from that aspect. How was that?
Um, Initially hard, because being in an abusive relationship made my heart really hard, and it was something that I was still kind of trying to get over. And so I didn't let a lot of people, I didn't let a lot of the sisters in. And that was hard in the beginning, because I think a lot of that, it then perceived, it gave me this thing of, well, I'm mean. A lot of people thought I was mean, and I didn't think I was mean. I think I was just like trying to protect myself. Um, but towards being there for 6 months, and being a part of the events and stuff was when I really um, got to get to know several of the sisters that, uh, I mean, I ended up living with them towards the end, but um, it, it was just more fun. It was like, you're not trying to please these people in any kind of way. These are genuine, like, deep conversation kind of friendships. And that's what I was also missing being a part of an abusive relationship is, well, I didn't tell anybody what was going on. And so nobody knew. And so I wasn't really being honest with other people. And so having the friendships, having those friendships back in church and in that way as being a disciple is like, okay, well, I need to share these with these women, because that's the only way that my heart, like, that's the only way that we're all going to get to know each other truly, is if you understand like the struggle I'm going through. But that took me several months to kind of get over as own my own concerns, essentially. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it's an
I had many great friends. I haven't had many great friendships in Richmond.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that when you mentioned the part about kind of being perceived as mean, but the root was really this. I've been having a lot of those conversations with my friends too, just saying how like even in thinking about how we study the Bible with people, just understanding like, man, it's so important to get to the root though, because I think the outward behavior is so much more easily observed clearly, but and then we try to like fix the outward behavior, as opposed to really trying to figure out the why.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
then understanding that correcting the why is the only way that true change is really going to occur. Like you mentioned, so many of the people who got baptized and kind of like that class of individuals where you fell away shortly, you know. And I can imagine at that age just being motivated by what's supposed to be right and just making it look like I'm doing those things, but not necessarily getting to the heart of the situation. So that's important.
And it was, I mean, something that Richmond did and does very well is the kind of events and being partnered, having your disciple link partner and having the number of people that live together is not something that was very. So when I first moved to Richmond, I realized that some of the things that like we were doing in Las Vegas, like a lot of people didn't live, like a lot of sisters didn't live together. That wasn't something that was like common. Um, and that was something that was like really big in Richmond. Like everyone was like all the sisters, all the brothers, like they were everyone was like always together. And I didn't understand that. And I was like, who wants to always be together? And so that was like also what really helped me grow my friendships is I'm like, oh, okay, like if I go to these events, like turns out I will also learn about them. Like, okay, I have to like truly be a part of the situation because there genuinely is something going on all the time. And if there's not, they're still always together. So that was, yeah, that revelation was also great.
Yeah, that's awesome. So then eventually you dated again.
I did.
So what was that like from a couple perspectives? One, this being your first relationship after the abusive relationship. And then two, I'm curious about just sort of what you continue to learn about yourself now that it was healthier, and done much differently than it had been in the past.
Um, in the beginning, it was weird in the sense that it was weird to have someone ask you for me, it was weird to have someone ask me how my day was. Um, what are the things, what did I read in my study that day? It was, those things were very new. And I had a hard time then being like, well, what did you read? Because I didn't have those questions ever asked me. So I would always answer and I'd be like, yeah, okay. And then I wouldn't then ask, like, it took several months for me to then like, but what did you learn in your study today? Like, so that kind of like back and forth was definitely new for me. It was different. It was fun. It was nice to know that this person was looking out for my heart, and that they weren't um, looking for anything else, like from me physically in that way. And uh, I didn't feel pressure to be any different than I was. I was like, I'm a nerd and I like these things. And, um, you know, I felt like I didn't have to hide who I was, because we had built on a foundation that was like, this is who I am. This is me not pretending like these are the things I like. These are the things I dislike. This is what I know about myself. What I learned in that relationship is, which sounds bad now, but at that time, I wasn't very patient. I wasn't very empathetic or sympathetic. Um, and I was very selfish. It's what that relationship taught me, like about myself. Like
Right.
I was not giving in that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I can imagine, like, um, even in my own experience with like going through the divorce, I already know myself well enough to know that I'm locked up, in my heart. And so I'm like, oh man, I got to do some work, because I can feel the self-preservation. So I can only imagine too that, like, having the history that was there, that was going to be a component that had to be like really knocked down,
Yeah.
to be able to open up and give 100% of you in that way, because to be patient and to be empathetic makes you the vulnerable person.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know it opens you up to hurt, to kind of like give of yourself in that way. So I can see that, why that would be a thing.
And it's not, and I didn't express it well. I was very, it, it took it. I mean, that's one of the reasons we broke up, but it was hard to then learn those things about myself afterwards, because I don't know, I don't know what would have happened, but I can't now. I used to have guilt that, well, I did this to somebody else. And that was hard as well. Like, to know that, well, I wasn't patient, I wasn't empathetic or sympathetic to like their situations and things that were happening. And then to think about like, well, oh, how did that actually make them feel? Because in that moment I was selfish because it just made me feel this way, and I didn't care that it made him feel this way. So that was hard.
Yeah, you like, dang, I see myself and it's ugly.
Yeah, it wasn't good.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about, so that situation ends, that relationship ends up ending. I think you were in Richmond for a little more time after that, and then eventually at the end of 2016, or middle of 2016-ish, um,
Mm-hmm.
moved back home.
So we broke up in February.